Hey everyone, I'm your host, Robbie Straczynski, and thanks so much for joining us on episode number 38 of CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. Today's guest is the longtime editor of PokerStrategy.com, Barry Carter. Beyond the time he's put in at his day job, Barry made quite the name for himself as co-author of 4 very well-renowned poker books: The Mental Game of Poker, Volumes 1 and 2 with Jared Tendler, and PKO Poker Strategy and Poker Satellite Strategy with Dara O'Kearney. On today's show, we'll find out what drew Barry to a career in poker media, as well as find out a little bit more about his life outside of poker. Barry, welcome to the CardsChat podcast.
Robbie, good to see you, my friend.
Likewise, it's been a while. It's good to see you, and we've known each other for quite a while. I know you've kind of been around forever in poker media circles. When exactly did your poker media career start? And prior to this current gig with Poker Strategy, what positions did you hold?
I was very lucky. I got into poker in 2004-ish. And I just had this compulsion to write when I was picking up the game and learning the game. And at the time, not many people wrote about poker as a vocation. So some blog, which if I were to read it now, I'm sure I'd be mortified by the bad advice that I put into it, was written. And the editor of World Poker Tour magazine contacted me.
Wow.
We had... in the UK, we had a World Poker Tour magazine. I don't think it was a magazine anywhere else. And just said, could we buy that from you? And I was like, wow, people will pay for this. I didn't even really know poker magazines existed at this point. So I was like overjoyed. And ironically, the fee that they paid me back then was probably the highest fee that I would ever then get paid, because back in the day, like, magazines were a thing and they paid a lot of money relative to the market. So I was working a boring job in insurance at the time, and I was amazed that someone would pay me to write about poker. So I just kept pestering the guy who was the editor of WPT magazine and just said, what about this? What about this? I could write about this. I could write about this. And he was really, really happy, because I think at the time they struggled to find people that could write poker content.
Right.
And before you know it, I was kind of like writing most of the articles at that magazine. So I then contacted other magazines to say, hey, look, I just wrote for the World Poker Tour magazine. Maybe you'd like me to write for this magazine. I think I've written for every paper magazine in poker.
Wow.
Which is a strange accolade now, because the people watching this probably don't even know what a magazine is. There
aren't that many of them that have survived.
There's not that many survived, So at one point I started writing for websites as well, and got friendly with the then editor of Poker News, who then offered me work writing for his website. And then I eventually quit my day job, got a full-time role at Poker News on the UK site, and I used to do copywriting for the main Poker News website. Yeah. And then that's how I carved a career in poker. And eventually I moved up to Poker Strategy, as you mentioned. Yeah. And somewhere along the way, I branched out into writing books with people who were much more talented than me.
Well, we'll talk about those folks for sure. It's so interesting. I didn't realize you kind of like almost accidentally stumbled upon this poker media type of thing.
It really was a fluke.
Wow.
Like I'm very mindful of the fact that it was a moment of somewhat dumb luck that started my career. Although I'm very pleased with the fact that I then grabbed the bull by the horns, as it were, and sort of pushed my advantage when I got one. But if not for that moment, I'd be doing something potentially very, very differently.
Sure. Well, you said you were selling insurance. I mean, what did you study in university? What did you originally? I mean, you didn't think that poker would be a career that wasn't necessarily this niche even fully developed. What did you think you were going to do back in the day?
I did media studies at university, which basically means that I wanted to go to university to get drunk for 3 years, and picked a course that sounded. No, I went to university with no particular career plans, and then I came out of university with no career plans and got what was supposed to be a temp job at an insurance company, and I was
Wow.
there for 6 years. I was like a manager by the end of it. It wasn't. I didn't completely just sit around and do nothing. But no, I'm afraid I'm one of those people who went to university because it was the thing to do, and without any sort of grand plan. And my advice to my old self would have been not to do that, although it worked out really well for me.
Right.
If we had 100 iterations of this, it probably wouldn't be a good thing overall. So
right. Well, you said you started this blog, and you just decided to write about it. How did you sort of become familiar with poker in the first place? I think you actually played a little professionally, if I remember correctly.
Right. Okay. So I worked at an insurance company, and one of my best friends, still one of my best friends, told me about poker. And he told me he watched a film called Rounders. He started playing on party poker. This was when it was very, very easy to win at poker. So I went round to his house one day, and he just showed me him winning $50 playing cash games at poker. So I went home, got a party poker account, deposited $50, and lost it in about 10 minutes.
You and millions of others. I remember those.
So
days.
he and I just spent our working hours just talking about poker, and he was giving me advice on how to play poker. And before you knew it, I was just consuming all the books and stuff that I could read. So I was eventually giving him advice on how to play poker. Wow. So he kind of created this monster. And I still quit my job to write about poker, not to play poker. And what kind of happened for the first 2 or 3 years after that was I was playing poker to supplement my income as well. Now, I'm very careful about how I describe this, because I was not particularly great at poker, but the average player was so much worse than me that I was actually doing pretty well at poker. So now, as a pure recreational poker player, I am 10 times better than that guy, but that guy could make money because the games were so easy. So
I've heard a lot of stories about those days.
Yeah. So I'm very careful about, at the time I described myself as a semi-professional poker player because I had a kind of delusion of grandeur, but in reality, I was more profitable as a player back then than I am now, even though I'm a significantly better player because the games were so easy.
Wow.
It's because the games were easy. It's not because I was great.
And it was like, but you were also just good enough as well to write about it when also, quite frankly, not too many people were doing so. And you just felt this compulsion to write, like you said.
This is the thing. There was a real opportunity for someone like myself because people were either good at poker or good at writing, but the players who were sort of really good at poker at the time didn't want to create content.
Sure.
This was back in a time when most of the poker players didn't want to give away their secrets, as they were. They didn't realize that they could significantly monetize their abilities by making training sites and stuff like people do now. Like it's amazing when you think about it, as like how reluctant people were to give away poker advice 15 years ago, when now professional poker players will share every single hand that they play on Twitch, not only to their audience, but to their opponents as well. So to see how much it's shifted in that time. But at the time, that meant there was an opportunity for plucky writers like myself to fill this big content gap. And it's come full circle now, because it's quite difficult for media types like you and I to even do content, because, the really good professional poker players are, I hate to say it, better than us in a lot of respects doing that now.
Well, that ties into what I was going to ask, though. You were writing strategy content, or you were covering the poker world? Because the Jason Koons and the Jonathan Littles of the world, they're not reporting on what happened at the WPT deep stacks.
Yeah, it started as strategy writing for the first 20 or so articles, but then when I started to get a foothold in the industry as a whole, I quickly moved more towards the reporting style of things. So interviews, I worked for Poker News, so that meant live reporting, just generic news articles. And I was quite glad to not be writing strategy articles by the end of that, because, with every week that I was in poker, I was realizing that I was, not as knowledgeable as the fact that I was getting paid for. strategy advice would suggest.
But you're willing to sit down and put pen to paper. So
Yeah.
there's what to be said for that. All right. So you're firmly ensconced in the poker world. You're humming along at Poker News. And then this sports psychology guy, Jared Tendler, comes along and says, help me write a poker bestseller, right? So no, how did it really happen? How did the two of you guys meet?
Jared, I heard on the 2+2 PokerCast.
Okay.
And he sounded good at what he was doing. He sounded there's a lot of sort of snake oil salesman in poker where the mental game stuff was concerned. I didn't get that vibe from him. So I just approached him and asked if he'd like to do an interview with me. And then also suggested to him that maybe he could give me some mental game advice and maybe that could be an article. Because I was kind of like throwing computer mice across the floor and getting upset whenever I had a bad beat was the real reason that I contacted him. And we hit it off instantly. We have a similar kind of bro sense of humor about certain things. And we kind of realized that I was benefiting from getting mental game coaching from him, which he was doing for free, because I wrote for so many publications, I was able to get him in lots of publications. So I kind of became his, I guess, his publicist, and he became my mental game coach. And it's just a very, very easy kind of sort of relationship there.
Convenient for both of you. Right?
Very convenient. He was helping me. I mean, like as questionable as I am as a poker player, I do not tilt because of my work with Jared. I'm very just kind of like, oh, I just lost with aces. Oh, well, ho hum. And so, once that relationship had been going for, I'd say about a year, and we were seeing the benefits, and he was getting better known in poker. I think this was probably the other reason. He decided to put pen to paper to write the book. But what Jared still kind of was missing was just, he wasn't a poker player. It's funny, really. He knows a lot of you could stick Jared in a conversation with Jason Kuhn and Stephen Chidwick, and he would hold his own in that conversation. You could send Jared to a local card room and just give him some cards, and he'd still look like an absolute amateur. It's ever so funny that there's real sort of gaps in his knowledge. So that's kind of what I was there for. He'd have some ideas, and I'd say, right, poker players, we'd say it like this. We get upset about this, and that's sort of how the back and forth went until we had a book.
Interesting. Got to give the shout out to Jared. He was our guest on episode number 35 of this Cards Chat podcast. Always a good opportunity to remind our listeners and people watching. We've got dozens more of shows that you can go ahead and listen to and watch after you finish this one. All right. So you're the highly experienced co-author. What was it like writing a poker strategy book for the first time together with Jared?
It was hard with Jared. I am somebody. We have two styles which complement each other perfectly, but they do not make for. They naturally go against each other. So I am someone who can get. I get excited, and I can get 40,000 words written in 2 weeks or something like that. I am enthusiastic. I am enthusiastic and sort of energized, but I am not as great a sort of finisher of these things. Jared, on the other hand, is very detail orientated, very thorough. He's a real perfectionist. So I can get you a book started and get you 2/3 of the way there. And then Jared is the one that actually sort of really, really works diligently on it to actually sort of make it really good. Whereas I would have submitted a messy manuscript and so on. So it's two styles that kind of clash but need each other.
Interesting.
So the book took a lot longer. The book took a lot longer than I wanted it to, but if you look at the sort of sales rank or the reviews on Amazon, you'll know it was worth it. So.
Sure, and then you guys, I guess, would do well in the WSOP tag team bracelet events, like with your contrasting styles.
Well, we're both rubbish at poker, so it probably wouldn't be so great. But yes.
That's fair. Well, you did release the book on an infamous day. Black Friday saw the debut of the mental game of poker. We heard from Jared on his episode, number 35, from what it was like from his point of view. How about for you across the pond? What was that day like? You just finished working on this project, we'll release it, and we don't get the top headline.
I was in the most interesting place in the world when Black Friday happened. I was at Dustle Dawn, the best card room in Europe, working for Poker News. We were covering a televised cash game called it was a Party Poker big game. It was like a 36-hour non-stop cash game. Okay. And in the background at Dustle Dawn, there was quite a sizable regular poker tournament going on with a big buy-in. So you had sponsored players from PokerStars and Full Tilt playing in the Party Poker televised cash game at Dustle Dawn, a live card room with a TV crew there and the actual poker community in the background playing poker. Wow. So I was walking through the card room and just noticed that everybody was running up to the media people's laptops and everyone had stopped what they were doing and everybody was congregating around everybody's computers and everyone's like, I'd say the biggest thing that was sort of rife there was people were just laughing in this kind of like, oh, screw my life kind of gallows humor, kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe it's happening. So people were just laughing in disbelief. And everyone started sort of telling each other what was happening. PokerStars and Full Tilt were down. And I got a real snapshot of the entire poker industry in one fell swoop. Plus, I just written a poker book that had taken the better part of 2 years. It was that in the morning, we had sold something like 100 copies. So I was, and like, obviously you're not going to sell 100 copies every day, but we were like, wow, I can imagine if you could sell 100 copies every day. We were so excited, right? And then suddenly like, wow, I just couldn't believe it. And the biggest kind of personal sort of impact it had on me was I knew Jared had spent a lot of money on the book because this is before we self-published the book, but this was before there were robust print-on-demand options for self-published authors. So Jared spent a lot of money on the cover designs, the formatting of the book. We printed, I think, 5,000 copies or something like it was something big. I can't remember because obviously you buy in bulk, the cost per book is much cheaper. Of course. So I was just devastated for Jared because writing about poker was my regular job. I wasn't too concerned about myself at the time.
Even on Black Friday, you didn't say, "Oh my God, I'm not going to have a job in a week or something."
It was that too.
Okay.
There was definitely that too. Okay. I was worried about that as well.
Okay.
Especially because I worked for Poker News, who were a mostly US-facing live poker operation. So I was, most of the industry, like I'd say 60 or 70% of the revenues in the industry at the time were from PokerStars and Full Tilt. Yeah. So I was very concerned about that, and everybody was concerned. The only people who weren't concerned were like the live poker people who were in the room that day.
Right.
Yeah, and so I was mostly worried for Jared because it cost him so much money, and then I was so shocked for my own personal side of things that I was more taking this stoic observer role as just how, like I remember seeing like Mike Matusow and this guy called Andrew Feldman, not the ESPN Andrew Feldman. He was a young poker player. They were both sponsored by Full Tilt, and I just remember seeing them across the room, and they just looked like they were going to cry and stuff. Wow. So yeah, I saw everything that day. I think I was in the best possible place in the world to witness what could have been a career-ending sort of moment for us all. The one thing I'll say, in hindsight, Black Friday was scarier for the industry by a mile than COVID ever was. I know COVID's been very bad for the live poker industry, and I'm not saying it isn't, but we were definitely more pessimistic after Black Friday that there'd even be an industry. So we survived that. We can survive COVID, I think.
That's it's encouraging words, and from someone who's been around for as long as you have, you've experienced all the highs and all the lows. So it's definitely encouraging to hear about that type of resilience. And of course, as we know, everything ended up okay. You doubled down, you released volume 2 of the Mental Game of Poker a couple years later. What would you say you're most proud of in terms of your work with Jared on those first 2 books? And also, what would you say are some of the most valuable lessons you learned in the process?
I definitely am the most proud of the fact that we still turned it into a bestseller when it looked like it wasn't going to sell any copies at one point. We did some stuff. We doubled down on the European audience to begin with because they weren't shut out of the poker market. Because Jared is a mental health counselor, we also used the opportunity to make him the kind of counselor to US players. Like we did a lot of stuff we did a lot of blogs and interviews and stuff about how to mentally handle this unbelievable disruption that was happening. In a way, it might have been the case that Black Friday is what turned it into a bestseller because it really narrowed our focus in terms of marketing. We knew what we could do, we knew what we couldn't do. We probably worked a lot harder, whereas maybe we would have fallen into a trap of some early success with the book and then given up. Right. We ended up promoting both of those books, I'd say, for 4 years solid. So
it's a classic, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating. Wow. All right. Well, I said in the intro that we'd learn a little bit more about your life off the felt. You can't tell those who are watching by that beautiful background there that you live in the UK. You live in Sheffield, England. I guess it's, you used your one time and got beautiful weather today with your wife, Gina, and you've got a dog. I don't remember the dog's name.
That's Charlie.
Charlie. Okay.
Charlie, yeah.
So other than come up with funny tweets for us, for our amusement, what sort of stuff do you do for fun out in Sheffield?
Well, what we do is we stay locked in our house for 14 months at a time and watch Buffy the Vampire on box sets. Do you know what? I don't entirely know what we do. I've got this. As this podcast goes out, we are literally being let out for the first time for pretty much a year. And I kind of forgot what we used to do for fun.
Wow.
I'm really looking forward to sort of seeing my friends on a few nights out and stuff like that. I guess the answer is Gina and I, we like city breaks. We like going for nice meals. Nothing particularly unusual. I like reading and box sets of sort of American dramas and stuff like that.
You're a big Seinfeld guy, right?
Oh yeah. I love comedy, of pretty much sort of stand-up comedy and sitcoms and stuff like that. But no, I can't remember what we used to do. I mean, funnily enough, I kind of fell out with poker for a while as a player.
No kidding. Wow.
For I'd say maybe 4 or 5 years, and the last couple of years, I've really, really got back into it, and I'm really enjoying it. And that is one of the benefits of the lockdown. I've got quite competent at tournaments again and stuff. So
we'll be talking about that.
Walking my dog and going for a coffee is kind of my thing, even though I can't do that anymore because I can't do caffeine anymore. But yay, it's fun being me.
That's totally fair assessment. Well, I do hope that the next year you're able to rediscover all of the things that you had used to enjoying. You'll be able to again. Something certainly all of us can identify with. Before we get back into your book writing, I know you have another side project. Maybe it's kind of sort of been on the shelf for a while, pokermediapro.com. It's a niche site that I always enjoyed reading. Tell us a little bit about that site, Barry, when you started it, why you started it, and what's sort of going on currently with it.
Yeah, it's a very small, has a very small but loyal following. I haven't done it for probably just I'd say a year and a bit. It's probably just at lockdown when I stopped doing it. I used to get contacted quite routinely from people asking how to get into the poker media. Actually, if I went through my old emails now, I bet you there'd be at least 4 or 5 people that are very well-known people in the media who contacted me first. And I'm not saying it was my advice that got them where they are, but they probably sought me out at least for some of it. So I used to get asked, how do you get into poker writing? And I used to write this. I used to always give them a detailed reply of, do this, don't do that, contact these people. And I just decided one day to turn it into a blog And then, that seemed to be quite popular. So I did another blog and another blog. And then I kind of thought, well, this is a good niche thing to have a blog about. So I made the website, and it was basically my business card as a media expert. I kind of thought, right, if I just blog occasionally about, what it's like in the poker media, nobody's doing that. And then I kind of realized that actually I can interview people who work in the poker media, and they can just give me all their secrets for free. And I'm not even joking.
I was one of the interviewees. I remember.
If you go on to pokermediapro.com, it basically at the end became me interviewing people who I think are talented at some aspect of the industry, and I wanted to learn more about that. As you can tell right now, we like being interviewed, especially when we're usually the ones doing the interviews. So it was just that, and I've just been a little bit too busy with book projects and stuff like that to keep it going. But I keep renewing the domain, and if I ever got fired from Poker Strategy, I'd probably maybe try and make something of it. I really enjoyed it, and like I said, it's a very good business card, if nothing else. I have had a lot of work offers from people over the years because of that website, and I'd say some of the material is quite dated now. I wouldn't particularly trust the first 30 posts on that site because it's from when we used to write about poker and before audio, visual, and streaming was such a big thing.
Sure.
But the latest stuff, I think, still stands up. Yeah. So still worth checking out.
As I said, I've always found it to be an excellent resource. And if there's anyone else out there who's thinking, hey, this stuff that we do sounds a little interesting, definitely recommended. Check that site out, pokermediapro.com. All right. Back to books, Barry. Promote. You hooked up with Unibet Pro and CardsChat ambassador Dara O'Kearney to write another couple of books. So how did that relationship first come about?
Funnily enough, great segue from the Poker Media Pro blog, because
it's almost like I prepared these questions. Okay, but yeah, go ahead.
You prepared in advance, yeah. I once wrote a blog, called Poker Books That Have. It was something like Poker Books That Haven't Been Written Yet. And I wrote, I just like, these are some books that I think would sell, and I don't particularly want to write them. And one of the books was like an updated book on mixed games. And if you've read Ken Lowe's book on mixed games, he wrote that book after reading the blog.
Wow. I didn't know.
Yeah, he sent me, and it's massive as well. It is a huge book. It's a hell of an undertaking. Like that, in terms of like pride and stuff, little things like that. Very proud that something small that I can do can lead to something like that. And he sent me a signed copy, thanking me, for the blog and stuff. So, and one of the things that I wrote in there was, a book on satellites would sell. Because they are, in my opinion, something that we have not utilized enough in more recent years in poker. I mean, they really do sell that Cinderella dream of an amateur playing with the big boys and stuff. So, and satellites were the only format of poker that I considered myself still to be quite good in. I had a good friend who works for PokerStars called Nick Wright, who sort of told me about satellites 12 years ago and how soft they were and the basic strategy and stuff. So it got to sort of 2019. It was pretty much New Year's, and I was kind of in that New Year's mindset, and I was thinking, like, I've not written a book, and this mental game of poker thing has pretty much bought me a house, so maybe I should do more books. And kind of thought, well, I can't write it on my own because I'm not good at poker. So I knew Dara was considered the absolute authority on satellites at the time, and he and I didn't know each other particularly, but I've always had a respect for him. I knew he was a very, very diligent student and teacher of the game, and he was pretty much the only person I would have contacted. So I just contacted him, and luckily enough, he had a similar kind of admiration from afar kind of attitude towards myself, and without knowing me much at all, he said, "Sure, yeah, let's do it." And
very cool.
So we did.
Well, excellent. That's a great story. So how would you say the experience of working with Dara, who is obviously, very different background, professional poker player, was similar to or different from working with Jared, who obviously comes from, a completely different professional field of psychology?
Yeah, well, in terms of the one thing that Dara and I are very different with than Jared and I is he's very much the same ethos as me when in terms of just like, let's get this done, let's do it right away, let's get it done in a week, like we're very, very productive, very, very we'll just jump on. We're not right, I'll be careful how I say this. Neither of us are perfectionists, but he's very diligent and thorough with his rigor and his maths and his the sort of work ethic that he's got. So in that respect, it was great because we wrote it significantly quicker than we ever would have wrote Mental Game of Poker. The tougher part of it is psychology is not as mathematically rigorous as the maths of game theory optimal poker. And it was very, I am
lots
not
of charts.
That's right. I am not particularly gifted in that area. I'm very much a monkey see, monkey do kind of guy. It's like everyone seems to be raising, half pot. I'm going to raise half pot. That's my kind of thing. So that was the difficult part in it. There was a lot of times when I was just like, I was getting tension headaches from just like squinting at my screen going, right, okay, so it's pocket sixes, but pocket fives can't do it. And just all that stuff. So it's, I like to think that we turned a very difficult mathematical endeavor into something very digestible for the reader. But to do it was tested the limits of my brain power. And it's for Dara, it's just like he can just do it while he's like doing two other things at the same time. So it's a very, very different mental makeup between the two of us in that regard. So
gotcha. Okay.
Big test of the maths.
Well, obviously that book did pretty well too. So you and Dara, you followed the same formula, and then you go ahead and you tackle PKO strategy. So I'm kind of wondering, was this kind of like, they filmed the Marvel Cinematic Universe and they have lots of scenes ready for movies number 2 and number 3 while they're filming number 1? Or was this just like, okay, let's move on to a completely separate project?
No, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. What happened was I got quite good at satellites as an obvious side effect of writing that book. What surprised me was I accidentally got quite good at PKO tournaments without ever discussing PKO strategy with Dara. And that is because, let's say if you have regular tournament strategy in the middle, satellite strategy will take you to the extreme end of ICM where everything's a fold and you can be very aggressive because everybody should be folding. And PKOs are the complete opposite end where everything's a call. You can be really loose. You can be really aggressive. So I found myself in lots of spots where I'd be like, well, in a satellite, this would be a fold. But in a PKO, I bet I could call with this terrible hand. So I kind of twigged that when you understand one aspect of ICM, you can apply it to some very, very different aspects. I mentioned this to Dara, and then I found out that he was basically going with having the same epiphany. In fact, he'd been coaching some people on this.
Wow.
And he was starting to realize that he was really good at satellites because nobody put the same amount of study into satellites as him back in the day. And he was having the same kind of aha moment with PKOs about 18 months ago. He was studying them in a way that not many other players were studying them at the time. So, between the two of us, we kind of came to the same conclusion around the same time. His a very high level one, mine a very kind of recreational player kind of approach, and it was a natural fit. And we'd only just finished the satellite book, and
right.
the formatting and stuff, everything, it was all still fresh in the mind. So yeah, it really was like two back-to-back Marvel movies. I do like that analogy.
Very cool. It's trademarked, so we'll talk afterwards about that. Okay. Beyond having your finger on the pulse of poker for so long, obviously, as you've mentioned, you obviously learned a ton of extra poker and mental game skills from Jared, from Dara. And, we mentioned you do play a bit online and you've seen some notable successes in the past couple of years. So go ahead and brag a little.
Yeah, I'm a winning player now. I think that's probably the main thing I could brag about. I'm not a big winning player. I saw a 5-figure score there. Yeah, but that was definitely an outlier. I did have a $15,000 win in actually I've got to say because it's plugging both books. So I played in a $5 satellite that won me a $500 seat into a party poker tournament, and then I thought, right, I'll play a PKO because it was party poker, so you can choose which tournament you play. It wasn't just a specific one. Mm-hmm. So I decided to use the ticket in a PKO tournament because I kind of thought, well, if I get one bounty, it'll be like $120.
Yeah.
And that's pretty good return on my $5 satellite win. And I ended up coming second in it for $15,000. At a very fortunate time because I literally just moved house. So that paid for all the furniture. Great. So really my wife won $15,000 if I'm being honest. And I around about then I went on a bit of a heater where I was sort of coming sort of first and second in quite a few PKO tournaments. Great promotion for the book. There was a period where Dara just couldn't believe how many sort of podium finishes I was having in them. And then I kind of died down a little bit for the better part of the year. But the last year, I'm proud to say that I am a small winning player. I think my earn rate is something like, if I'm honest, €4 an hour. It's not spectacular, but it's a hobby that pays me. So
yeah, and it's better than losing €4 an hour. Most players, they've got budgets rather than bankrolls. So you're fortunate to be on the other side of that coin. And the reason I bring it up, not just for you to toot your own horn. Fact is, I imagine this is the type of story that a lot of players could, either resonates with them or inspires them as well to go ahead and improve their game. You don't necessarily need to be a poker professional. If you put in the work and you put in the study, then you can also be successful, even at, a small win rate. But if you're doing it for fun, then, it's nothing more fun than also winning while you're having a great time.
I would say the fact that I was creating content as part of my study, because my only real study was creating content with Dara.
Sure.
And I actually think that's a really good way to learn, because if you look at the guys who are on Twitch, some of those guys have gone from being okay players who stream to fantastic players. Yeah. People like Ben Spragg and Finton Hand, they were, when they both joined PokerStars, they were just good players. But I kind of think that because they've been in such a sort of all eyes are on them environment, and if you look at them now, they're absolutely fantastic players. And I think the creating of content has made them better players. So yeah, I'm comparing the guy Finton who won 200 grand last week to me who wins €4 an hour playing poker. But
well, of course, we've got to do the shout out to Finton. He was in episode number 27. He was our interviewee. Hopefully at some point we'll get Mr. Spraggy on as well. 2020 was a tremendous boom year for online poker, and 2021 looks to sort of be something similar for the live poker scene. Are you kind of itching, now that they've let you guys out to get out there, strut yourself back at dusk till dawn and win all the pounds?
Yeah, but I cannot wait to go and be bored at a live poker table. No, I can't wait. I can't wait. They unfortunately closed they closed my favorite card room in Sheffield, where I'm from. But I am 40 miles away from Dusk Till Dawn, so I will be going there quite soon. Yeah, I'm desperate. I'm desperate to get it. I've worked from home for 12 years. Yep. No, more than that. Wow, 14 years. And funnily enough, just before lockdown happened, my New Year's resolution was to get to more poker events, because I was staying in the house too much. So I was like, right, I'm going to go to an event a month. Two international events every year, something like that. Yep. And then look, we know what happened. So I am even more keen to do that than I was a year ago.
Excellent. Well, I hope they open up soon, and that you'll be there and go ahead and be bored while winning €4 or pounds an hour. How about that international travel? It's been ages, if I recall, since you've been out to the Las Vegas for the World Series. We don't have the exact schedule, but we know it's going to be September 30th through November 23rd. You gonna dip your toes across the pond a little?
Probably not this year. My wife and I have kind of made a commitment to we don't particularly want to go abroad this year because unless everything's opened up again, I don't want to go and sort of experience a pandemic version of freedom in another country. Having said that, I'm sure Las Vegas will be as close to pretending COVID never happened as anywhere in the world. So, like, we have people in this country that are like, as this podcast goes out, we will have been allowed to go abroad for 2 days. And there's people in this country that will go and fly to Portugal that first day. Yeah. Even though like there's a really good chance they might have to quarantine when they get back or something bad could happen and stuff like that. Personally, I just can't wait to go in a coffee shop again. I can't wait to go to the cinema again. I'm looking forward to going for a friend's birthday. Like my holiday this year is going to be just doing the normal things that I've missed for the last 40 months. So I want to do Vegas and the other places when everything's actually completely opened up again. Having said that, like if an opportunity comes around or if I'm bored suddenly in this country, I will change my mind. But I can't see any international travel happening until early next year.
Well, verbal is not binding here on the show, but it's good to leave your options open.
We are allowed to go to Israel in this country, though. It's one of the 10 countries we're allowed to travel to. So
come visit.
I can come visit.
That's good. I'll pick you up at the airport, and that is a promise, not a threat. There aren't too many folks, like we've said already, in the poker media core who can say they've been around as long as you have. 2004, 17 years. Obviously, that takes versatility, persistence, genuine love for the game and the industry. And yes, we'll got to put in there a little bit of luck along the way, but it's mostly the other stuff. What sort of advice would you like to impart, aside from, everything you've already put on your Poker Media Pro blog, someone who's watching or listening to this podcast again and sort of says, hey, this sounds pretty cool what Barry's done with his life. I'd like to do that. Maybe I can't necessarily hack it at the tables, but I want to be involved in this industry. So, anything to sort of share with them?
I'm not sure really where it comes to like the longevity or something like that. I mean, ultimately, I guess I would say you have to follow some sort of project where you're the boss and you are compensated for your time. Like I work for Poker Strategy, absolutely love them. But having the books where, the more successful the book is, the more successful I am, that is a massive motivator because you don't know when you could be fired. You don't know when people don't want to read websites anymore. So, your job is not sort of really paying the bills anymore. So I would say you've got to follow something where you see you will benefit if it goes spectacularly well. And then I'd say also just follow whatever interests you. Like I've heard a couple of times I've had job offers that many people in poker would have just bit your hand off to take, but for whatever reason it hadn't interested me. So I said no. Whereas writing a book on satellites, that actually interested me. So I pursued it, and you're just more likely to stick with the things. You're not going to give up on them. It's not going to get sort of sour or boring if you're in sort of charge of your own fate, as it were. So that'd be my advice. Kind of have a stake in your own success in that regard.
I like it. Wise words. So we've got one more question that I've prepared, and then we're going to move on to the second segment of the show where our wonderful Cards Chat community has prepared some questions for you. Barry, this is a question we like to ask all of our player interviewees, but since you're such a friendly guy and you've spent some time at the felt, of course, who is the friendliest player you've ever had the good fortune of sitting with at the felt?
Oh, wow. Well, I'm fortunate. There's been lots of them. I'm telling you, I've got a good one. You'll probably know them. There's if there's one person who's been around poker longer than I have in the poker media industry, it's a chap called Tony Kendall, known as TK in the UK.
From Sky Poker, right?
Sky Poker, big part of the poker community. This guy is a good friend of mine. I haven't had many mentors in poker because poker media wasn't a thing, so I was one of the first guys. But he was like he was someone I looked up to big time. And he's worked with a lot of live poker ventures in the UK that encourage amateur players to come out and have a good time. And he's always friendly and really, really good fun at the tables. And in particular, my mother got into poker a little bit, and she just once wanted to play live poker. And I didn't know where to take her because, unfortunately, there's a lot of card rooms and places that I kind of think this will be a horrific experience. To be perfectly honest, for any woman at the poker table, you know, there's things that can be improved in that regard. And there wasn't many places I wanted to take them, except for Tony Kendall's, one of his websites, Blonde Poker Forum, UK forum, very friendly forum. I'm a member of it. And they were having a tournament called the Blonde Bash. And I was like, right, this is a friendly environment for, you know, elderly woman to go and play poker. And I took my mother to Dustle Dawn, and she was lucky enough to share a table with Tony. And he was spectacular as a host. He got everybody at the table talking to him. Every time someone new joined the table, he'd say, "Hi, this is Millie. She's new to the game, so she might be a little bit slow." You've seen the really good weather we're having in the UK right now.
I saw my eyes wandering.
So yes, he's lots of fun, and in particular, he welcomes anyone new to the table. He's a real hero of mine.
Brilliant, excellent pick, and a great story. Shout out to TK. All right, well, in this segment of the show, we turn to you guys, our Cards Chat community, to see what questions you wanted to ask our guests. Of course, we've got a dedicated thread on the Cards Chat forums for this. So as we announce who our future guests will be, we give you the chance to go ahead and send in your questions. Our first question comes from Acid Burn FX, always asks some very interesting questions, very creative ones. Barry, if you could invent something, what would it be?
Poker related or just in general? I don't know. What's my biggest problem? That's what. I guess. Oh, do you know, something that would make me younger. I'm 41 now, and the last year or so has been the first time that I've kind of noticed like the real sort of like time catching up on me in some regards. Like when I was up until about 18 months ago, if I went to the gym a lot, I'd have lots of energy and I'd be a little bit thinner and I'd look a little bit better. This is the first time that I will go to the gym like sort of 4 days in a row and feel older and less fit by the time I've come out of it. So yes, something that would take me back to like when I was 23 years old and in my prime.
Fair. I would say the key is not going to the gym. Then you'll avoid all that great feeling. Shells, another great, very active member of the Cards Chat community, asks some more conventional questions. Barry, who is your hero in poker or otherwise?
Well, definitely Tony Kendall, who I mentioned previously. To be honest with you, and again, sorry to plug the books and sound sort of sycophantic, but Dara is genuinely one of my heroes. For many reasons, but for one of them being that he actually started playing poker at 42.
Wow.
And he is, you know, considered one of the intellectual powerhouses of the game. He kind of proves something, which is that it's not your age at the poker table, but the way that you picked up the game. So he started playing poker at 42, but he started on the same trajectory that online players did. Right. So, you know, whether it's like a 21-year-old student or a 42-year-old software engineer, which is what he did, he kind of proved that it's not your age, but you know how you sort of approach the study of the game. So I guess Dara is one of my heroes. Yeah,
I like it. It's just a number after all. Next question from Shells: what would you consider your favorite thing in poker?
I don't know if it's my favorite thing, but something stuck out to me today, which I thought was fun. Right? I don't know if you've seen, but at the time of discussion, Jason Kuhn has offered $2 million. He claimed he's 35 years old and a former college sprinter. Yeah. Everyone who I know says he's a very athletic guy, and he said online the other day, this weekend, that he thinks with a year of training he could run 100 meters in 10.9 seconds. which is fast, obviously.
Yeah.
And a bunch of Twitter people came out and said, no way, you're 35 years old, absolutely no chance. So he basically just said, I will bet $2 million I can do it, right? And then suddenly, I don't know, by the time this podcast comes out, we'll know if the bet got taken up, but suddenly the narrative changed to Jason Kuhn, he's such an athlete, if he dedicates a year to it, don't bet against him. So my answer to that question is, I kind of love the fact that we have this thing in poker where if someone really believes something, they will just say, I bet you. Yeah. I will bet you this. And it's a great way of just sort of showing your conviction in something and shutting people up, right?
Yeah.
We could, if you go onto Twitter at any time, people are arguing about socialism versus capitalism or atheism versus theocracy or something like that. And no one's ever going to be persuaded by the other person. And they'll just argue until they're blue in the face. But when in poker, we can say, I will bet you £1,000 that you're wrong on this. And it will either stop the argument, it will see the argument come to a conclusion, or at the very least, you'll respect the person for sort of making the bold gesture, if they pay off, of course.
I love it. Fantastic answer. I love that. We've got one final question also from Shells here. Other than yourself, who is your favorite author?
Yeah, loads of good ones there. I really like a British guy called John Ronson. He's like if you've ever watched a Louis Theroux documentary, it's kind of the book version of that. He like throws himself in very, very unusual, sometimes dangerous or weird situations. I like Malcolm Gladwell. Who have I been reading? If you're into crypto and stuff like that, there's an author called Dominic Frisby who I've quite enjoyed this lockdown. Yeah, loads of people. But I'll go with John Ronson. He's very funny.
We will accept that answer. Well, thanks so much to everyone who sent in questions for Barry Carter. And again, just a reminder to all of you in our Cards Chat community, we'd love to see you submit your questions for our future podcast guests in the dedicated thread on the forum. So please be sure to give us a good review on iTunes, spread the word via your social media channels if you like the show. Barry, before we go, anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
No, I am literally hoping now to have a good few months of just doing fun stuff. So I'm really kind of hoping that you won't see me that much on Twitter or anything in the next couple of months because I'll be too busy enjoying myself. But I wouldn't surprise me if if in about 4 weeks' time I'm just posting tweets of my dog like nothing ever happened. So hopefully you'll see me out having fun rather than doing stuff.
I love it. Very good. Well, Barry, thank you very much for joining me. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Cards Chat podcast. I'm Robbie Straczynski. You can follow me on Twitter at CardPlayerLife. I wish you all a wonderful day.